want to have a good life, you have to work at it, and you have to contribute to humanity.
Hi, Vail.
Hi, John. How are you?
I'm good, buddy. Everything good? Good with you?
Everything's good with me.
You got radio going now? You are something else, man.
Well, John Kemp, so happy to be talking with you today. And first, I'd love to hear from you a little bit about where you were born and what your parents were like.
Well, glad to be with you, and thank you for inviting me to join you today, Vail. I always think so highly of you and really appreciate you asking me to join you. So I was born in Iowa in 1949. I have a sister that is 4 years older than I am, and she also was born in Iowa. And shortly after I was born, without arms or legs, off at the elbows and the knees, my family moved to Minnesota, to St. Paul area, and my little sister was born on September 6th, 1950, and 3 months after that, or so, 3.5 months, my mother died of ovarian cancer on December 31, 1950. So my dad, at the age of 32, was left to raise 3 kids, and we're pretty happy with everything he did for us. In fact, couldn't have had a better dad, and he's really my role model and hero, and just pushed me and pushed me and pushed me. I got artificial arms when I was 2. I got artificial legs when I was 3, and by 4 I was in regular school kindergarten in Bismarck, North Dakota, where we moved after St. Paul. So that's kind of the start of my life there, Vail.
Wow. And when you were a young boy, John, did you know your dad was a hero at that time, or what age were you when you it started to really resonate well that your dad was one of your heroes?
Well, I really didn't know much about other people's parents. I knew that I didn't have a mom, but I didn't know what it meant to, how a dad should act. And, there was never a right of one appeal in our home because we didn't get to go, go ask your mother, go ask your father. We didn't get that other appeal to anything. It was my dad's rule was his rule, his way or the highway kind of thing. So he was a tough guy, but he just made lots of really great decisions for us. And as I got older, probably 8, 9, 10 years of age, and I was sort of comparing him to my friends' parents and hearing what people were saying about my dad, I really knew that he was somebody special. And even though as I got into my teen years, I thought he was a complete idiot and didn't understand anything about my life and what I wanted to do, of course, he got smarter as I got older, and it all turned out really, really well.
Wow, that's great. John, tell me, when was your first job?
My first job was as a paper boy. I got a Minneapolis Star and Tribune paper route in Bismarck, North Dakota, where we were living after St. Paul, and I was probably 8 or 9 years of age, and I engaged my younger sister, who's an Irish twin, 11 months younger than I am, to work for me, and I paid her, I'm pretty sure, sub-minimum wage, but she was only 7, and I'm sure I took total advantage of her doing that. But she didn't have a disability, doesn't have a disability, but she was very helpful. We would pull a wagon with 30 newspapers around and deliver papers on Sunday only to 30 homes, and then go back on Thursday afternoons and collect our, for the subscription. And there were a lot of steps, and my sister would run up the steps and deliver the papers, would run up the steps and collect the money because I have some difficulty going up steps. And anyway, it was my first job. So I was essentially an entrepreneur, self-employed, and making a little spare change and trying to pay my sister a fair wage. I wouldn't say it's appropriate, but it was a fair wage for what I was making.
Wow, that's great. And was that your idea, John, and where do you think that idea came from? What were you? Why were other people getting jobs at 8 or 9 years old?
I'm thinking back on it now, and I'm pretty sure my dad planted the idea in my head. He probably knew that there was a paper route coming open, and he probably walked me into it as only my dad could do. He would plant the seed, and then it would appear to be my idea, And I'd say, well, I think I can do the paper route. And he'd say, really? You think you could do that? Really? Is that right? Anyway, he totally set me up for it. I'm quite sure. And I had that paper route until we left Bismarck, North Dakota when I was 13 years of age. And it was really small. I mean, now today paper routes are, 200 to 1,000 papers, and even if there are still such things as paper routes, and they're huge, and people drive by and throw papers from their cars, and we would walk it around on a sled or on the wagon. So pretty
Wow.
small, pretty humble.
That's great. Tell us, how did you chase down your wife, and tell us a little bit about her?
Oh my goodness, Vail. My wife Sam. I just think she's the greatest gift that I've ever been given in this life. She's a beautiful person inside and out. She smiles all the time. She's a happy person. She's very caring and loving towards me and to all people. She really appreciates family. She's a real pro at raising money. She has been she was the Chief Development Officer for United Cerebral Palsy of Greater Birmingham, and I was the National Executive Director of United Cerebral Palsy, and I went to one of my first meetings about this time of year in New Orleans, and it was a telethon-related meeting. So I went there, and I met her, and I just kept thinking, my goodness, she's such a lovely, good, kind person. I mean, just really an amazing person. And years later, I found out that she had separated and divorced from her husband, and I had done the same with my wife. And I said, would you like to get together sometime? And she said, sure, that would be great. And it was many years after we first met, but we would see each other like once a year at the annual conference of United Cerebral Palsy. And by gosh, I was so happy that she said yes, and it meant everything to me. So I'm a lucky guy.
Absolutely. What does she love most about you, John?
Wow. I think she would say that I'm almost always happy, that I have a really positive outlook on life, and I think today is great and tomorrow's even going to be better. And I think she would think that was a very admirable characteristic. She may not say I'm the smartest person or the most handsome person or anything like that. I think she would say, though I'd like it if she did, I think she would just say I'm a happy, genuine person. I'll take that.
And John, give us a little nugget here. What do you think you did to really twist her arm to say yes?
I don't think I stalked her necessarily, but I think we just hit it off right from the get-go, and I think just becoming her best friend and she becoming my best friend was probably the most valuable trait, just accepting everything about her and she accepting everything about me. Obviously, telling her how important she was to me and still is to me. I think just making sure that she knows how much I love her, and those are just things that some people just can't say, and they don't say very often. I don't think there's a day that goes by that I don't call her beautiful and tell her I love her. And I think that would solve a lot of problems in this world if we just were honest about those things.
Amen to that. I totally agree with you.
Good.
You are one of my heroes in life, and we've got 20, 25 years in between us, and we're similar in that our bodies are a little bit similar in the no arms and no legs piece, yet both of us have been very successful. Tell me a little bit about your professional career from after being a paper boy up to what you're doing today.
First of all, I knew about you the day you were born from your uncle, John. So I have known you your whole life. And it's just been an honor to know you and to watch you grow into such a really incredible and dynamic and smart and successful young man. So it's really a privilege. I think that my outlook was shaped by my father, who essentially said, get out there and do it. You got to be in the game. You got to play. You got to participate. You've got to work. You can't be expected to be taken care of all your life, and that if you want to have a good life, you have to work at it and you have to contribute to humanity. So my sisters became nurses. I became a lawyer working in the area of disability rights. I went to grade school in North Dakota, high school in Frankfort, Kentucky, college at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C., law school at Washburn University School of Law in Topeka, Kansas, and settled into an environmental law practice prior to the passage of the 1973 Rehab Act. And the 504 regulations weren't signed for 3.5 years, and during that time I was doing environmental law, but environmental law didn't have the same spark as working on behalf of people with disabilities and advancing the rights of people with disabilities. So as soon as the 504 regulations came into effect and said all federal financial recipients had to not discriminate against people with disabilities, I knew that I could help employers and agencies and any covered entity like colleges, universities, hospitals. I could take that side of it and tell them what people with disabilities were thinking. So I've always been on the employer or the organization side, and I have not been on the advocate side. But I always felt that companies and organizations that had to comply needed to hear straight from a person with a disability how best to comply and to do it right and do it cost effectively. So that was my niche, and I stuck with it, and had a wonderful career advising corporations, had a consulting business for a while, a law practice that was more of a consulting business, and then got into more of a management roles for nonprofits, and then a law partnership in Washington, D.C., and then today I'm president and CEO of the Viscardi Center and Henry Viscardi School, which is a remarkable place with nearly 400 employees and just a fantastic place where we have a school for kids with very significant medical fragilities and very severe disabilities. And they thrive here, where in their home school district they may not get the appropriate attention or the appropriate supports and services that they need. And then we have adolescent and adult programs for people with disabilities as well. So we've got quite an operation here, and we think we're leading edge on a lot of our practices.
Why are you doing that, John? Why are you part of the Viscardi enterprise?
Well, I got to the age of 60 in my law practice, and all things were going great. And I said, I kept telling my wife in the last year of that law practice, I said, going down to Capitol Hill and trying to talk to our members of Congress about disability policy was getting to be more difficult, and even on the obvious and simple things that could easily have been adopted in a nonpartisan way became challenging. And it was very frustrating to see disability being ignored for no good reason. And I knew that this country was sort of heading in the wrong direction, and people with disabilities really do need a lot more supports and services to be able to live a quality life. I was just sort of frustrated, and I ended up hearing somebody out about what I think about coming to Long Island and being the president and CEO of the Viscardi Center and Henry Viscardi School. I made the trip up here by myself, a day trip. I looked around. I saw assets everywhere. I went back to my wife and I said, it's everything that I could possibly want. I get to manage a good-sized staff, a good budget, have a lot of creativity that I could impose, try new programs, new cost-effective solutions, get people with disabilities employed. So I came here and I have loved every minute of it.
John, you gave me a tour of the school, and I was knocked cold in seeing such severely disabled humans who have such significant challenges, and you tour the school and everyone is happy. FedEx is there, I think, or UPS, and Gap is there in the school. And so it's probably, in my book, the best education where you're teaching people to be independent while giving them their academia. And kudos to you and the staff and everyone that plays a part in that school. Tell me a little bit about Henry Viscardi. Did you know about him before you took the position, and who was he?
I did know him, and by the way, it was an honor to have you here. Words can't adequately describe what happens here every day. as you know. So thank you for coming and being a part of it. Now you're part of the Viscardi family. But Dr. Viscardi was just an incredible driving force. He was a guy born with mal-shaped legs that he really had difficulty walking on. In 1952, he opened Abilities, which is still our existing subsidiary.
Wow.
And he is a fireball. He goes, this is intolerable to leave people with disabilities unemployed, and he was just irate, and it was just unbelievable how forceful he was. And my dad looked at me and he said, you can be like him someday.
Wow.
And I am now the fourth president and CEO of the organization that Dr. Viscardi started. I feel like I was destined to be here from the time I was 9 years old on. Talk about putting an arm on you.
Yep.
When he would raise money, he would lean in, talk quietly, and touch the potential donor's arm and say, you're going to help me, aren't you? You're going to help me with this school. These kids need it. These adults need this work. And he was just like a master. He was just extraordinary. He wasn't taking advantage of people. He was actually helping them fulfill their donative intent. And he just knew how to do it, and he understood the plight of people with disabilities.
Sounds like he had the character of a leader, and then he acted upon the gift of leadership. People are craving for leaders.
Absolutely. I think there's just this terrible lack of moral leadership in this country right now. We need it wherever we can find it. We need it in you and all the people that are listening. We need them to step up and be good, moral, ethical leaders that really set examples for younger people coming up behind us.
Absolutely. John, tell me a little bit about disabilities, just in general. What was it like 60 years ago? What was it like 30 years ago? What's it like present day, and where's it headed?
Well, I guess I'm old enough now to be able to go back and say there was really a charity model, kind of a pity model, and the fundraising was done around it. I mean, my goodness, I was a poster child. They asked me to wear Bermuda shorts. I have artificial legs, so they were showing off the legs. It was just all about what the public could see and if it would cause them to emote in a sad and pitiful way towards us. And that really wasn't healthy. It might have raised money and gotten some services, but at that point in time, it probably wasn't the best image to put forward, but it was the best one they had. Then we obtained our civil rights in the early 70s. And some people liked it, and some people didn't like the fact that we were getting civil rights. They thought we were overreaching and didn't need them. And, in fact, we really did need fundamental civil rights protections. So it became more of an equality era that we are in, and we're still in that era, and there has been very little progress with the ADA in terms of employment. A lot about the built environment, a lot of progress on technology, but the employment has lagged. We've only gone up 1% in the 27 years since the passage of the ADA in our employment. So we're not doing something right. We're not telling employers that we have talents that we can offer, proving to society and to ourselves that we are worthy and that we belong and that we have something to offer. I so admire you for being an entrepreneur with a disability. That is really going to be one of our proving points, is to show that we can start businesses, run businesses, employ other people with disabilities, and make a good life for ourselves and our staff.
Wow. My last question, John, is there are so many people who are stuck. When we went out to lunch in wherever we were, Maryland, and they put 15 crabs on the center of the table, I thought you were going to be stuck. And all of a sudden, you're eating crab better than I was. When in life do you get stuck, and what does that look like?
I rarely get stuck. I usually try to keep all my options open in front of me, and I work very hard to think ahead and think about where I'm going, whether it's physically or a personal situation where I might be traveling, and I try to anticipate problems. But the issue, I think, is that I'm not afraid to ask for help. I am very courteous and respectful to the person who I'm asking to help me. I receive the help, and I am grateful for it, and I thank them for it. But they do not take control of my body, or they don't take control of me. So I'm very careful about making sure that I help, and I say thank you to them. But then the pay it forward part is that I now have an obligation to help other people do whatever they can. They don't have to have disabilities, but as long as I'm paying it forward, and if I'm writing a letter on behalf of somebody who needs some help, that's my payback. So I try to keep the ledger balanced and equal. and I don't let myself get stuck too many times. And if I do get stuck, then I just ask for help. I'm not afraid to ask for help because I know how I'm going to respond to it.
I agree with you. I've got an attitude of no fear, and what's the worst that can happen? And there's so much benefit that comes from that attitude, and what a great life one can live when they live the life of no fear. You know, the number one rule is safety first. I'm not saying don't be safe, but an attitude of no fear and living life to the fullest.
You said it much better than I, my friend. That's exactly right.
That's a wonderful note to end on. Thank you so much, John. And I really hope your life story can impact hundreds of thousands of people across this country.
Well, thank you, Vail. I love you. And you keep doing all the great work that you're doing and the leadership that you offer. And I hope to see you soon.
Sounds good. Thank you, John.